Barton Cane offers a huge variety of GSP cane. Leave the cane processing to them. Use coupon code DoubleReedDish rocks my world for free shipping on your next Barton Cane order. www.bartoncane.com.
Chemical City Double Reeds is a full-service double reed shop specializing in the sale of instruments, cane, accessories, and sheet music. Double Reed Dish listeners can enjoy free shipping with code DRDISH, all caps, no spaces. Visit them in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or online at chemicalcityreeds.com.
Hi, I'm Galit Kaunitz.
And I'm Jacqui Wilson, and you're listening to Double Reed Dish,
a podcast for oboists,
bassoonists,
and the people who love them.
Jacqui, guess what?
What, Galit?
It's my birthday month.
It is your birthday month. I haven't been scheming about a gift, but just to give myself a little pat on the back, last year I did get you like the most epic present ever.
You did.
I forgot what that present was. Oh my God. You all just heard it. She just forgot what I gave her last year. Oh my God.
It reminded me. Gift giving is not one of my love languages.
It was a multi-step process. First, I had to
Oh, yeah, I have it right here. Wait.
I had to find the most perfect pictures of her dogs. They had to be endearing. They had to be characteristic. They had to be forward-facing. I then commissioned an artist to create graphic renderings of both of her dogs. And then I took the file that I got from the artist and had it put on canvas and sent to her. And she does not even, she was looking at me like, what, give me? You're too much. Oh, that was real.
Canceled.
That was not rehearsed.
I'm officially canceled. It was really the best gift I've ever received.
I can tell. So yeah, what else have you been up to lately? Anything you're preparing for? Any fun summer performances?
Oh my goodness, thank you for that leading question.
Yes. Professionals.
I've juggling two big projects right now. I've talked before about the quintet project that I've been doing rehearsal weekends for. I just got back from a rehearsal weekend for that. We're recording in July. That's very exciting. And then at IDRS Virtual Summer Symposium at the end of July. So y'all have plenty of notice. My colleague, Jonathan Yarrington, and I have commissioned 3 brand new works for oboe and tenor voice. And we were accepted to present those at the conference this summer. Unfortunately, Jonathan is on vocal rest. So, best wishes to your chords. But I've got this great tenor stepping in, David Walker, and we've been rehearsing that, planning to record in just a few days from when this episode is released. So the pieces are phenomenal and so exciting and just completely excellent. So I just, I've been diving into some chamber music after a year and a half of no chamber music, and it's wonderful.
I think about a vocalist on vocal rest, and I just think about like being in college and like the vocalists walking around with like these gigantic scarves around their neck,
a steaming mug of tea.
Yeah, Nalgene bottles that fit like 2 gallons.
With a notepad so they can write everything down.
On vocal rest. I'm just kidding.
Just a stage whisper. I'm on vocal rest.
Oh, yes. Well, and funny you mentioned IDRS. I am also planning. Stephanie Patterson and I are doing a half recital of works for two bassoons. We are doing the Thea Musgrave Take Two Bassoon duo, which is kind of a trip to try to put together remotely.
Yes.
Chris was a gem and made us these click tracks that I guess in Pro Tools you can make click tracks that include retardandos and odd tempos and accelerandos, and so he did that for us.
Chris,
I
that's
know.
so nice.
I know. He's like the best. And then we're also doing a piece by Elizabeth Baker. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Elizabeth's work, but it's very, it seems complex in the things that it questions, which is kind of our traditional concept of sound. But she explained it to Stephanie and I that she's trying to get back to the most simple music making, which is kind of a childlike music making and less of an emphasis on beauty and technique and all of these things that we've learned and ingrained ourselves into, and more of an emphasis on kind of joyful noise, I guess. So there are things like we cannot play traditionally. So there will never be a time like read on bassoon and I'm blowing into it. There's direct sounds. So maybe I'll like tap something against my bell, or there's indirect sounds. Maybe I don't know, throw a handful of popcorn kernels at my bassoon. Probably not that, but
throw them at Chris. He'll be okay.
Yeah. Thanks for the click track. Different like amplification processes, and she's actually going to take our raw sound files and manipulate them. It's going to be like nothing I've ever played before. It's just completely stretching my brain and making me unpack all my concepts of like right and wrong and accurate and inaccurate. And the growth has been so fun and I'm super excited. So it's like two completely opposite works that were juxtaposed from across the country.
Coast to coast.
Coast to coast. Bassoon duet extravaganza. So that will also
love it
during IDRS.
Oh my God, I forgot to name the composers.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, so it's three new works by one by Josh Burrell, one by Chayu Shu, and one by Tanu Corbett. So anyway.
I didn't know you commissioned Chayu.
Yes, I did.
Oh, I put that composer on Galit's radar. So.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, and we commissioned a piece by her for Reed Trio, and we played it approximately 25 times.
It was so good. It
was really good.
We're just not actively playing Reed Trio anymore.
I learned how to flutter tongue, so I can do it now. I can do it.
Okay, now she's bragging, so it's probably time to go.
Big brag.
But again, I feel like we do this every single episode, but not ready to announce yet, but kind of a cryptic reference to Galit and I as Double Reed Dish may or may not be doing something for the IDRS conference as well. So you'll just have to
may or may not, but definitely are.
Stay tuned for the details on that.
You should come hang out with us on Zoom.
Yes.
Because really, we miss seeing all of your faces at live places. I mean, I do. I don't know about Jacqui.
I am introverted, but listen, I do love our listeners and our Double Reed community. And so, yeah, we're cooking up something fun for the virtual conference that you all don't want to miss.
We cannot wait to share it. And we love you and we miss you. And enjoy this interview. That's all I got. Is that okay?
Perfect. Specializing in the finest assortment of oboes, clarinets, bassoons, and their accessories, RDG Woodwinds serves musicians around the world. Their employees are all professional musicians who have a deep knowledge of the products that they sell. RDG's repair shop has an international reputation with a combined 100 plus years of service among the 5 repair technicians. Plain and simple, RDG provides excellent products and fabulous customer service. Visit them at rdgwoodwinds.com. They look forward to working with you.
Founded by Logan Esterling, Reed Design is pushing the boundaries of oboe and English horn reed making. They take the knowledge they've collected from hundreds of reeds and, with the power of machine learning, derive patterns and trends that accurately predict the characteristics of finished reeds while early in the sorting process. The result is quality reeds with characteristics you can count on. Using their products will save you valuable time and let you get back to what you love, making music. Visit www.reeddesign.io to learn more. That's REEDESIGN.io.
We are happy to welcome to the podcast Tristan Rennie, artist, faculty, and residence at the University of Northern Colorado and second assistant principal bassoon with the Colorado Symphony. Welcome, Tristan.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. Nice to be with you both. Great to be on the double reed dish.
Yeah. We love to begin at the beginning. So I would like to start by asking you how you came to play the bassoon.
Well, let's see. I have to kind of give credit, I think, to my sisters. I have three sisters, two of which are older, one younger. And my oldest sister started playing flute. And then my next oldest sister started playing flute. So it sort of became this, the Rennie children were going to become musicians, at least, in school. So, and marching band, I grew up in Texas, and marching band was a big thing. And so the family was pretty involved with that. And so when it became my turn around sixth grade, I had to, they had the instrument petting zoo. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to play. I guess saxophone and trumpet, of course, are always the popular picks. And so that was sort of the going in on that. And they tried me on flute, because my sisters were pretty good on flute and I was terrible on it. I couldn't get a sound. I couldn't get anything going with that. So they pulled out the bassoon, and I don't think I'd ever probably hadn't seen one before, or I wasn't particularly too familiar with it. And they sat me down with it, and they just had me blow into it while they played like an easy scale. And I just remember, the buzzing of the reed in my mouth was pretty unique, and the sound was kind of interesting, and just the size and the shape of it was kind of a weird kind of instrument. And so I went home that night, and I was sort of torn between the bassoon and euphonium, and I sort of toiled about that over the evening, and eventually picked the bassoon just because it seemed like a more interesting choice. And that's kind of how it happened. They brought the bassoon over. I, put it together, sat at the piano, was fiddling around with it. And my parents were able to get me lessons with Jan Harper, who I recently sort of connected with on Facebook after so many years. And she got me off onto a good start on bassoon, learning all the fundamentals and figuring out this kind of weird and wacky instrument. But I guess I'd always sort of been drawn to sort of the lesser played stuff, the lesser noticed things. I was thinking about this last night, like in Boy Scouts with the Pinewood Derby. I don't know if you've heard of these things where the Boy Scouts would make these little pinewood cars that they would race, and
Whoa.
that was part of the competition, and the other part was how your car looked. And a lot of people would make their car look really sleek and cool and futuristic and stuff, and I was more drawn towards the sort of classic sort of style of cars. One, because it was more appealing to me, I suppose. And two, I knew less people were probably going to be, submitting their cars into the classic car competition. So I put together this
bassoon.
That's the bassoon. It's the classic car. So I remember making this Pinewood Derby car. I mean, it comes in like a block, and I know this has nothing to do with bassoon, but I carved it myself with a pocket knife, and it looked kind of bad. I painted it, and it didn't really look much like the car I was going for, but it got third place in the classic car competition. So that was pretty exciting. So I think that kind of cued me in, like, go for the lesser played stuff. That might be more fun. It'll be, more an adventure, I suppose.
I just picture you chasing your older sisters around with their flutes and your bassoon.
There was actually my little sister plays oboe, and there was one Christmas where we commissioned a little piece for us to play as a quartet for our parents. So that was kind of, I think that was the last time all the Rennie children got together to play.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
Like the Von Traps.
That's right. Yeah. So, a little musical family, I suppose, but yeah.
I love it.
So can you talk us through getting serious about the bassoon and deciding to pursue that as a career, and just kind of walk us through your training and educational journey?
So I guess it really, in terms of figuring out that that's what I wanted to do, I suppose, compared to some people, maybe a bit of a later bloomer, I enjoyed bassoon. I enjoyed playing in orchestra and band in high school, and was doing well at, the all-state stuff. But for the longest time, I actually, as a kid, I really wanted to be a veterinarian. I just liked animals, and my dad and I would watch the old All Creatures Great and Small show on PBS. I don't know if you guys remember that at all, or so this idea of sort of being a veterinarian was kind of the forefront of what I wanted to pursue. And I remember one summer, my dad and we decided to check out colleges in Texas. So we drove around all of Texas to go check out the schools for the veterinary programs and the music program. So because I sort of try to do both. And I think when senior year rolled along, and I was doing this class, which was a pretty cool class. It was called clinical rotation, which is where those that were interested in medicine would go visit clinics or hospitals or, what have you. And I went and visited a veterinary clinic, and there's nothing against veterinarians because they do great work and we need them. But it wasn't really exactly what I expected, I guess, from watching the TV shows. It wasn't like exotic, as exotic as perhaps I thought. It was a lot of, cleaning dogs' teeth and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay.
Expressing anal glands.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some interesting stuff, but yeah.
You're like, I have to put my fingers where?
Yeah. And, I mean, animals can't tell you what's wrong with them. So it's a lot of investigating kind of what's going on. And, no one ever brought in the cows or the goats or, any, the stuff that you saw on the show. So I was like, well, okay, maybe veterinary school isn't for me. But what about medicine? What about human medicine? Well, it turned out I just wasn't that smart to go into it. Well, and I took it. Yeah, I mean, I took a AP chemistry class, and I did not get it. My brain didn't work that way, and I'm
right there with you.
I just
didn't. Oh my God.
Yeah, and not that that necessarily was the big sort of reason that I decided to try music, but all of that kind of combined, and then with my experiences, like I think my junior year, I got to play Tchaikovsky's Six at the All-State Orchestra, which was a big thing. And we worked with Carl St. Clair, who was a real pro. And, I was playing the solo at the beginning, and he pointed out like a couple things to me, like, well, you should try this. You got to make sure it's not sharp. If you do this, you can get fired in a real orchestra. And and it was like, whoa, this is like a big thing. Like, this opened up an entirely new kind of world for me. And I was like, I think I could kind of see myself, doing this regularly. Like, I like performing. I like playing all this music. Why not go for it? And so that's kind of how I eventually found my way to pursuing it as a career. And so once that was sort of decided, it kind of was a natural pathway to check out University of Cincinnati with Bill Winstead, the conservatory there. And so I did my undergraduate there. And then after that, I went to the University of Michigan for my graduate degree, performance degree with Richard Bean. And then from there, I just sort of freelanced for a couple of years until I was able to land the position with the Colorado Symphony. So I think that's sort of the basic journey to where I am today. Yeah.
So I would love to ask you more about this process of elimination that led you to a career in the bassoon. It's my experience as a teacher that a lot of students come into college, not expecting it to be so consuming and funneled. It's a really credit heavy degree, and it's really intense, and it really is learning a craft, and it requires so much more than just the credits that you're taking. And I find that some students resent that and find it a little bit off-putting, like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. But you kind of got that out of the way before you even got to school through like, oh, I tried this, didn't work for me. I tried that, didn't work for me. So how does that influence how you mentor and advise your students at the University of Northern Colorado?
I think a lot of that thought process certainly could be done, before deciding which route you're going to go. Obviously, I think college is a good place to kind of, figure things out for yourself. Obviously, if you have it figured out before you show up, then all the much better. But I think, as you're saying, right, once you kind of get into it, it's a whole different world, especially coming from high school. Sometimes that can be a bit of a shock, because usually it's maybe the first time a student has sort of been away from home for a very long time, living on their own, and that in itself can be a bit of a stressor. And then certainly, the expectations, at a music school might be a bit higher than they were, in high school. Certainly with my expectations for any bassoon student, no matter if their performance, education, even a non-major, I have certain expectations for my students to come in, prepared on a weekly basis, knowing their music, so we can kind of work on, the less technical aspects of things and get down to the sort of the musical aspects. And sometimes that could be a little tough, because maybe they haven't been as pushed as much as they have been in college. And obviously, the ensembles are bigger. They're taking courses in music history and music theory that perhaps maybe they've gotten a little bit of experience in high school. But I think for a dedicated student that is, really going for, their career in music, they'll accept that challenge. And they'll grab it by the horns, and they'll have the motivation in themselves to kind of keep that going. I mean, speaking from my experience going into undergraduate, I wasn't all that great in theory coming into it. I certainly wasn't all that great in theory coming out of it.
Me too.
I would say I wasn't. And I mean, music theory is great. I wish I had embraced it more back then, to help me as a performer now. But, I certainly understand the struggles of suddenly being immersed in like an entirely musical environment where everything basically rotates around the music, and depending on how the student feels, sort of rotates around your weekly lesson. That's kind of how I felt, is like, I've got these classes and I got to make sure that I keep up with those classes and keep my grades up. But it's like that weekly lesson with Mr. Winstead, was sort of the focal point of my time at school. But I don't know if every student necessarily feels that same way. But yeah. Actually, can I give a quick shout out to my other high school teacher, because he was pretty influential, and I don't want to forget to leave him out. His name is Herman Vogelstein, and I lived down in a little town called Dickinson, that's in Texas. That's sort of south of Houston when I first started, and then we moved up to a town north of Dallas called Plano, and that's when I started studying with Mr. Vogelstein. And he was actually very helpful in kind of, once I decided on that route to pursue music as a career, he was very helpful in figuring out the good schools and the good teachers, and getting ready for those auditions. So big props to Mr. Vogelstein.
So, over the course of having this podcast, we've heard a lot from our guests about how one has to learn to audition, and how that's kind of a specific process that everyone navigates through as they are, pursuing an orchestral career. And so I would love to hear about your experience preparing for and auditioning for your position in the Colorado Symphony, and what led up to that for you.
Sure. An undergraduate, I would say at that time I was just learning to become a better musician, I would say that Mr. Winstead helped guide me to find my true voice on the bassoon. Becoming a better musician, becoming a more knowledgeable musician, and sort of ushering me through the steps of kind of what this musical world is really all about. And so in undergraduate, I wasn't really I didn't take any sort of professional auditions. It wasn't really on my radar at the time. I was preparing for auditions for like summer festivals and other programs and stuff like that. So I got a little bit we would work on the orchestral excerpts, but not in a way that necessarily was meant to go win a job. Mm-hmm. And so when I got to grad school, and I remember when I auditioned for Richard Bean, I went and played, and I don't quite remember what I played, probably the Mozart Concerto and maybe some excerpts and stuff. And he was complimentary, but he was like, if you come here, we will work on, these things that are deficiencies in your playing that you need to strengthen up. Like, you're doing these things well, but these things are things that you need to kind of focus on. And that was kind of refreshing, because it was like, here are my cards up front. This is what's holding you back in your playing. And if you come here, then those are the things that we will work on. And that really kind of rang true to me. Like, well, this might be a good place to come to kind of get this done, because, in 2 years, what am I going to be doing outside of school? Am I going to have a job, or what's going on? So when I got to Michigan, that's when it started to kind of become more real. And I do recall taking my first professional audition there. While I was there, it was for the Naples Philharmonic, or Naples Symphony. And I didn't know what I was doing. I got the packet of materials, and I would go in the practice room, and I would just sort of practice it. I was like, well, this stuff seems, I guess, pretty good. I guess I could play this all right. Marriage of Figaro is working okay. And then I went to the audition, and I didn't get anywhere. Maybe I played like a couple excerpts, and that was it. And I was like, wow, that was pretty unsatisfying. And so when I got back from that, and that might have been, I don't know, end of my first semester there. I don't quite remember, second semester. And at that point, I was like, you know what, this is a whole other ballpark. This is a whole other game that I'm dealing with here. And I need to come up with, or I need to develop a system, or I need to, come up with something that'll really kind of help me focus up with these short little excerpts that are going to sort of define what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And I remembered back to my senior year at CCM, and one of the clarinetists, he was actually in I was in a quintet with him for 4 years. His name's Ralph Skiano. He now plays principal clarinet in Detroit. He also played principal in Cincinnati, and he also played principal in Richmond. And he had, like, I think it was his senior year, he had went out and won a principal clarinet job, which, you know,
Wow.
seemed at the time like pretty unreal, like, whoa, you know, incredible. And I remember talking to him about it, and he kind of laid out sort of what he did to kind of, you know, make that happen, which was a pretty refined step-by-step process. And he actually just published a book with his full sort of audition method. I think it's a bit more expanded than what I remember him talking about, you know, as a senior. But basically his what he communicated to me was like, you have to run the list multiple times a day so that you become so familiar with the excerpts, so comfortable with them, that they become just like this daily thing that you just sort of live with for, you know, a month or so. And so what I started doing, I think it was for a Milwaukee Symphony audition. That there was a Christmas break coming up, and the Milwaukee Symphony audition was like after New Year's or something. And so I stayed in Michigan while school was on break, and I had the list, and Mr. Bean let me use the bassoon studio as sort of my practice studio. And every day I would go in there and I just practice. My first round of practice would be my fundamentals. So like all my Hertzberg scales and long tones and my Mildy scale studies, and kind of getting my reeds refined over that process. And that would set me up, you know, a pretty good foundation for the rest of the day. It felt like my reeds were working. I could get everything going. I felt like I was a good place with my fingers and air and stuff like that. And then I'd take a break. And then my next session would be like, you know, just straight up practicing, focusing on the excerpts and the Mozart concerto, that the parts that were very sort of deficient, the excerpts that were giving me the hardest problem, and focusing on the hard spots in that. And making that sort of like the main focus of the day. And then I take another break, and then later that day I would come back, and it would usually be at night. And since the school was empty, I could get into one of the like recital halls or the performance spaces, and I would just go and run and record the list top to bottom, trying not to stop, sort of putting myself in that position of, you know, it's a performance situation. And I'd go in and run the list. And I would eventually get to a point where I would actually run the list in the morning, just once through. Then I do another practice session. Then I would run the list at the end of the day as well. And then at the end of the day, I would listen to the recording, and then I would take notes as to kind of what didn't work so hot, and focus on that for the next day. So I do my fundamentals, and I would run the list. Then I'd practice the stuff that wasn't so great. Then at night, I'd go back into one of the rehearsal halls, and I would run the list again. And over the course of that, of a few weeks, like, I started feeling really comfortable with the list. Like, nothing, there were times when I'd go to an audition, and there were certain excerpts that were really scary. And I was like, oh, I hope they don't ask that excerpt. I hope that excerpt's not on the first round, you know, because if that one shows up, then, you know, I might be in big trouble. But I got to a point where it's like, they could ask me anything, and I'd feel fairly confident going in and playing it pretty well. Mr. Bean was still around for that break, and he was nice enough to come in and sort of do a coaching. Eric Varner was at school with me at Michigan at the same time. He was doing his doctorate. And so we were kind of preparing for the audition at the same time. And so we did this sort of mock audition with Mr. Bean in one of the rehearsal spaces. And that was very helpful to kind of, it was like one last sort of, input, one last sort of thing before we would drive off to Milwaukee and take that audition. And so I went there and I was able to get to the finals. They took the curtain down. I was, and I actually wasn't really prepared to make it that far because I didn't really bring the greatest clothing. With the curtain being up, you can kind of wear whatever you want. So I was wearing something I kind of relaxed, and then I was like, oh no, they're bringing the curtain down. I have to play with piano and I don't have a nice shirt, or I don't have nice pants. So I had to run out and buy a shirt. And my hair was longer than this. This is my pandemic haircut, but my hair was way longer than this. And so I had really long hair too. And
you're like, somebody give me a hair tie.
I know, right? So I wasn't really, I wasn't really prepared to make it all that way. But I went in and I played everything. I felt really good. I didn't win, but I felt really good. I played everything kind of how I wanted to play it. All the tonguing stuff worked really well. And from there, I was like, you know what? Not that I necessarily cracked there's no secret to taking auditions, but for me personally, it's like, I think the only way for me to feel confident going into these auditions is doing this list running thing and really hammering this practicing every day. And I mean, it's not like an earth shattering revelation, I suppose. Like, oh, I have to practice to go win. But it was like, well, it's the kind of practice that I was doing rather than just practicing. And so the auditions that I would do well at were the ones that I would sort of follow that kind of regimen. The ones that I didn't do so great at, I could look back and be like, well, I didn't really follow my plan. Mm-hmm. And then eventually Colorado Symphony rolled around, and it was kind of just another audition. It's like, well, I'm going to go for this one. And so I was trying to do my thing, and came out, and I had to make some adjustments because of the altitude, the reed situation from Michigan to Denver. Was a little tricky, but some sandpaper and things were feeling okay. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
Bassoonists.
I know. Oboists don't have that issue. You guys don't have to.
No, so when we interviewed Peter Cooper, when he took the audition, what did he say, Jacqui? He got there like a week early and made like 50 reeds in all kinds of different gouges and shapes, and by the end of it, one of them worked.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I didn't come out a week early, but that's a great plan. If you
chose the elbow. Sorry.
I mean, that's a great plan.
Just a little sandpaper, and we were good to go.
Yeah.
No, but for this one, since it was second/assistant principal, it was sort of a medley of all the greatest hits of the funnest bassoon excerpts. Funnest, is that the most fun bassoon excerpts? So like, I got to play the principal stuff, and then I also have to be able to play Brahms violin concerto. But just it worked out, I guess. Got to the finals. Jeffrey Kahane was our music director at the time. He conducted me through the second movement of the Beethoven violin concerto, I think, just to make sure that I could play it in time. But once again, at that point, when you get in, well, for me personally, I feel like when you get into the semifinals or the finals, I think the committee knows that you can kind of navigate all this stuff particularly well in terms of technical stuff. And I'm not saying you can go in and totally like crash and burn on an excerpt and still be okay in the semis or the finals, but I think you can kind of relax just a little bit and play yourself, play with your true voice, really try to communicate something to the committee at that point. I mean, I think they're looking for a little bit of that. I think at that point, like the individuality of each of the performers, and who would fit best in the group. And it's just something, sitting in a big hall. I mean, the Betcher Concert Hall in Denver is, a huge hall. It seats like 2,700 people, and it's in a round. So it's kind of it's an interesting hall. And so just getting to sit in a space like that, you don't know if you'll get the job or if you'll ever be back. So you might as well take advantage and feel like the big soloist in the hall, and play your piece and then see what happens. So luckily they came out and they announced my name, and it was like, whoa, all right. Word up.
Bonus.
Yeah, because I mean, I'd been to a fair share at that point and gotten used to them coming out and not calling my name. And so it's a bit of a shock to, like, you're hoping, like, oh, what are they gonna say? It's like watching any of these cooking competitions, they're about to announce the winner, then they cut to commercial. And then you're like, oh, who's the winner? And then they come back. And so, yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a joyous, obviously a very happy occasion. Because then you go back to the hotel room and you call up all your teachers and like, oh my God.
Definitely call your teachers before your parents.
That's right. Yeah.
It all ended up working out, but as someone who got very close several times before, you were announced a winner, did you struggle with frustration or disappointment in the process?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is that. I mean, especially getting in the finals and feeling like it's just one moment away, that things could change. I think earlier on it was just being sort of satisfied with my performance at the auditions more than necessarily the outcome of it. Mm-hmm. Feeling like that I went in and I played my best and I felt really prepared, and walking away from that usually gave me, the confidence and sort of the good feelings, like, okay, I'm on the right track. I'm doing some things right. I must be doing some things that people like hearing. And it just maybe wasn't my day or something like that. Later on, sure, it got maybe a bit frustrating. Mm-hmm. I mean, how can it not? It's just part of it. But you just gotta have to get back up and keep doing it, because that's sort of that's the way we do it here. Mm-hmm. So you got to keep going through the grind and keep putting yourself out there. And there have been times with some self-doubt, it's like, oh, what's going on? Why didn't it happen this time? Or why didn't I advance and stuff like that? And, I think it's just a matter of putting things in perspective, that there's not a lot of bassoon positions out there, and it's going to be a lot of competition. And every year there are new bassoons coming up on the scene, and they're getting better and better. I mean, they really are. The younger bassoons this generation are doing incredible things that I wouldn't even dreamed of thinking I could do, back then. So it's just one of those things that I think, if you go in, like I said, if you go in just trying to play your best, speak your piece, then there you can find some satisfaction in that. But yeah, the audition circuit is rough. And to this day, I've taken some auditions since I've gotten in the Colorado Symphony. I've been here for since 2006. So I've gone out and done some stuff and come close on some things. And it's tough getting back into it, I'll tell you. Because it's not slowing down. It's not waiting for you. people are out there still doing it. Young students have no fear. They have no inhibitions, you know. When me as a young student, like I didn't realize how hard this stuff was,
Mm-hmm.
you know, until someone told me like, oh, that's really hard. And it's like, oh, it is really hard. Uh-oh. um, and and then you know, so going in and like sort of feeling like, well, I'm just playing the music. I'm just playing the stuff that I've been working on, and that's what it is, you know, rather than it's like, oh, I need to play this, you know, Rite of Spring at this tempo and make sure that my high C is not sharp and make sure it's paced out well. And I got to hit the high D's and I got to make sure my grace notes aren't too fast and think about the vibrato and the tone. And, you know, I mean, like, not that that wasn't there necessarily before, but like it's more present in my brain now than it ever was. As you know,
as a more fully formed musician, you almost know too much.
yeah. And, you know, knowledge can be a bit of a, you know, can kind of get in your way sometimes, but
yeah.
You know, that's just growth, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, auditions, I think you have to dedicate a portion of your life, if that's the direction you want to go. I think at some point you have to dedicate all of it's hard to put it this way, but you kind of have to dedicate the majority of your life to that process, because someone else is someone has made that choice and that dedication to go and make bassoon and reeds and the excerpts. Like, they're going to be doing that all day, every day. And those are the people out there winning the jobs. Mm-hmm. And you can be one of them, or you could not, or you're not, you know? So I think it was that, you know, that Christmas vacation audition bonanza that I undertook that sort of opened my eyes to like, okay, this is the reality, and either I'm going to accept that and embrace it, or, you know, I'm not. And I chose to accept it, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, it sounds intense and obsessive and intellectually engaging, but it does not in any stretch sound fun.
Well, I will say, I mean, yeah, it's not fun. And, you know, these days, if something were to come up and I chose to go for it, I would be like, oh, here we go again. Okay. But I think I was finding it as I was, you know, going down the stretch. You know, early on, it wasn't fun, and it's not fun. I mean, it's work and it's frustrating, and it's, you have to be very honest with yourself about how things are really going. Because, I mean, you can't improve if you're not sort of accepting that certain aspects of your playing aren't where they need to be. So that in itself could be a bit frustrating, to sort of look in the mirror and really ask yourself, like, is that really good enough? But that process showed me what I did well and what I still needed to work on, and was actually kind of enjoyable near the end, because it felt like I could play, and the bassoon and the reed and all that stuff were no longer in my way, and that I was sort of singing, speaking, what have you, through the bassoon at that point, rather than this sort of inanimate object that I was, you know, trying to control and all that. And not that I totally, I haven't mastered it even today, but it was like, at this point, it was like, wow, a lot of these things that I thought maybe were tough, like soft attacks and controlled vibrato and, you know, good intonation over the course of an entire list of music, or good pulse and rhythm and Brahms or something. Mm-hmm. It was like, wow, that stuff like used to be really hard, and now it's like, it's sort of now built into me. So it was kind of enjoyable in that sense, I suppose. But yes, you are not wrong. it is a tough road to go.
Satisfying. Hard.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I mean, I guess that's all I have to say about auditions.
So, switching gears, we love to find out more about your favorite memories of past performances, both the wonderful, uplifting moments and perhaps the moments where you wanted the stage to swallow you up, maybe an embarrassing moment that we can all relate to. Would you be willing to give us something?
Sure. Well, we'll get the bad news out of the way first. Let's see. So this one was particularly embarrassing. It was in high school. I was at the Texas Tech band camp. I would go to band camp. Band camp was my summer thing.
Yeah.
And I'd actually had won the concerto competition there. So I got to play the first movement of the Weber Concerto with the Texas Tech band camp orchestra. And at the time, was I still playing? I was playing on a polypropylene, is the plastic bassoon, the black plastic bassoon. And I played the concerto and had the bows, the applause. I went off stage and I think I came back on and I was holding my bassoon in my right hand, I guess. And then the boot just totally fell off the bassoon onto the floor after my big premiere, my big performance, and my bassoon falls apart on stage in front of everybody.
What did you do?
I think I grabbed it and just I didn't come back on for another bow after that. So that was a good reminder. Like, okay, maybe hold bassoon with both hands all the time. Make sure the joints are secured well.
At least it didn't happen while you were playing it.
Yeah, that's true. So that was a fun cap to that performance.
Thunk.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, I was an awkward high schooler back then, so it was appropriate, And then let's see. Actually, for most memorable performance, oh man, I mean, there's been a lot. I mean, we've had a lot of great conductors come through and do some really great performances. I remember one time we were doing the planets, and in Jupiter, there's the sort of the middle section where it becomes more in one or two instead of bum 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 bum. And the conductor, and I forgot his name. I should probably remember that, but he just stopped conducting. And he had been conducting it through the rehearsals, but in the performance, he just stopped and just stood there and was just sort of watching over the orchestra as we did our thing. And something about that was just really magical and was very powerful. And that was particularly memorable. I mean, just the fact of sort of the non-conducting can create a moment was kind of interesting to me. And then back in 2018 was the first time that I ever got to play Principal Bassoon on Tchaikovsky 4.
Nice.
This is my whole career, and it took me, however many years to finally get that opportunity. It just never popped up in college or high school or whatever. And as second/assistant principal, I mostly play second here. But it was a May concert later in May, and we were going to be performing this at Red Rocks, which is this beautiful outdoor amphitheater here in Morrison, Colorado. And it's sort of built into these giant sort of, well, they're red rocks. And I was really nervous because I mean, it was outside. May in Colorado, it could still snow. it could get really cold, especially up in Morrison, which is only, it's only about 20 minutes away, but even that altitude change can affect reeds. And so I was like, oh man, we're going to be playing this outside. It might be cold. My reeds might feel weird. This is the first time I get to play Tchaik 4. And so it was a lot of pressure, but it's kind of a magical thing because when we start performing there, usually the sun is still up. And over the course of the concert, the sun starts to go down. You don't really notice it, because you're playing and sort of in the moment. And we get to the second movement, and it's now nighttime, and it was my chance to finally play this solo in context with the orchestra, something that I've worked on countless hours, many years for all these auditions, and I finally get to play that excerpt that has been a part of my life, and I think it went well. And I played it outside at Red Rocks, and it was nighttime, and it was beautiful, and it felt like, one of those things that I finally got to sort of check off on my list as a bassoonist. So that was kind of cool.
What advice do you have for a young musician who aspires to have a career like yours?
Oh, do they want a career like mine? Well, man, it's I would say, this past year has been a tough year for everybody, and it's really sort of open up a discussion about music and kind of where it's going and where it will be and what our purpose is as musicians. And I think it actually shows that music is very special. Live performances are nearly unheard of now. So first I would say, don't be daunted by the experiences of this past year. High school students are, probably haven't played much in band or orchestra. Everyone's taking lessons online. So like all of that, right now is kind of makes for a really weird sort of situation. And people may ask themselves, like, why would I want to do that? Right. Why would I want to pursue that career? But I think there is going to be a future. I think if you really love music, if it really speaks to you, if there's aspects about it, you don't have to be a performer. You don't have to be a teacher. You could be an administrator. You could be a musical therapist. There's many tracks that one could pursue if you love music. So my advice is, if you're looking for a career like mine, start early. If you can get the private lessons, start there. Get a good way to get reads early on. Listen to a lot of music, and not just classical music, but lots of music to kind of inform sort of your voice, inform your personality, how you would perform. Listen to a lot of non-bassoon music as well. I like to sing. I mean, I'm not a good singer, but like there was a time when I would go out and hit the karaoke bars, after concerts or something. It was just a nice alternative to, than what I was doing on the stage.
Jupiter was lovely.
The what?
Your Jupiter was lovely.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Sing, develop your voice without the instrument as well. Perform as much as possible. Whatever it may be, chamber music, orchestra, band, whenever, if you got the instrument in your hands, you're doing something with it, you're developing your own voice, you're developing, your relationship with the instrument. It's kind of hard to do that if you don't have the bassoon necessarily in your hands as often as you do. And just put yourself out there, I think. sometimes we get afraid that like it's not good enough, or we're not good enough, or I'm not ready to go out and show myself to the world. But as performers, I mean, that's what we do. And I think you'll find that there'll be positives by putting yourself out there, that people will be listening and people will hear the good things and they will remember who that bassoonist or oboist is and the great performance they did, and that can only help you down the road. So growing up as a kid, I was a very I still kind of am a shy person. I wouldn't say I'm the most outward going, but bassoon and performance gave me that outlet. I really, when I have the bassoon in my hand, I feel like I could do anything. Well, there's certain things I still can't do, but it's like with the bassoon in my hand, I feel invincible. I feel like I can go out there and do my thing, and people will notice and hopefully enjoy it. And I feel like a different person than I do without the instrument. Like the bassoon is actually my voice rather than my speaking voice. And that gave me the confidence, to go out there and pursue my dreams. And if the bassoon in your hand gives you that confidence, gives you that ability to go out there and show the world what you got, then go for it. Because people want to hear bassoon. They want to hear oboe. They love the double reeds. They never know what it is, but they love it. They get them confused. But I mean, whenever they see, one bassoon, the more bassoons, the better. They always, I spent quite a few summers at Aspen, and we would play the bassoon band, and there'd be like 8 bassoons out on the mall there, and people would always stop and listen. What is that? What is that thing? And it was just fun, It's like bassoon and oboe are just fun instruments that I think. Oh, here I go. I'm rambling again. I don't even know where I'm going with it. But, yeah. So, anyways, I don't know if that answered your question or it was just a string of words.
No, that's great. That's great.
Tristan, thank you so much for joining us. Can you believe it's been an hour?
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, if you ask me about Star Wars, I could go for another hour. I mean, we won't get into that. Just bassoon.
All right. So there you have it. That's the episode. Don't forget to follow us up on social media. We have so many cool things going on just beyond the episodes. We've got projects. We've got live appearances. So you don't want to miss out on any of that stuff. You got to follow us on social media and also rate and subscribe because that helps us out and helps more people hear about us. Galit, who's going to be on the next episode?
Next episode, we have the honor and delight of talking with Tim Gocklin, oboist in the award-winning Acropolis Reed Quintet and artist in residence in oboe at the University of Northern Colorado. Jacqui, time to end this nerd parade.
Go make reeds.